Welcome to the Rise and Wander podcast, where we'll explore adventure, spirituality, and empowerment through the outdoors and beyond. Join me, Carla Amador, as we focus on topics around the mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional benefits derived through the outdoors. You'll also hear inspiring stories, get educated, and more. Let's get started. Are you ready to take a life-changing journey? Join me for a hike per week or 52 hikes within a year at 52hikechallenge.com. Gain the physical, mental, spiritual, and emotional benefits derived through the outdoors. You'll also gain access to community, education, resources, and more. Plus, get 10% off on your sign up and first order with code RISE25. That's RISE25. See you on the trails. Hey friends, getting outside and hiking changed my life back in 2014. Now I want to share an even bigger adventure with you all. This October 2026, I will be leading a small group to Nepal to trek the iconic Annapurna circuit. Join me on a powerful journey through the Himalayas that challenges your body, expands your mind, and connects you deeply with nature and each other. This is more than a trip, it's a milestone. And if trekking Nepal has ever been on your bucket list, I would love for you to join us. Spots are limited, and you can learn more on our website at 52hikechallenge.com. Click on the Events and Trips tab, and then Adventure Trips with 52 to learn more. Welcome to the Rise and Wander podcast. I'm really excited to share that today I have a special guest, Traveling Jackie, or Jackie Nourse. And I'm really excited to share this episode with you all because we're going to get into traveling, outdoor adventure, and so much more. So welcome, Jackie. Thanks for being on with me.
Thank you so much. Yeah, we just got to do this on my show, so it's nice to swap mics and be right back at it. So thank you for having me.
Yeah. So let's start with that. You run an award-winning podcast, and tell me a little bit about how you got your start. I'm guessing a lot of the content you're creating, is it mostly for women or is it whoever listens? Is there a specific audience you are targeting?
Adventure hungry people. Really. I've never really been exclusive. I am a solo female traveler. And so I tend to attract a lot of solo female travelers. But aside from a couple of specifically women's retreats that I ran in person, and you can understand why those were exclusive.
Yep.
That we did two of those back in 1819, and that was the only thing I've ever done that's just for women. So actually it's very inclusive. And I'm really just my main thing is sharing and showing, because this is what I've done forever, is that, our biggest lives exist on the other side of our comfort zones. And whoever has an ear to hear that, I want to talk to them. So we're not exclusive here. We just want to kind of live big and bring everybody with us. So yeah, how I got started. When I was 18, I actually moved abroad and lived in Costa Rica for a year to learn Spanish. And actually what I got was a crash course at life beyond US borders, which is a thing, very much a thing. And I was just 18 when I was learning all of that. And so it essentially just completely detoured me from the path, the normal societal path. And I started blazing my own trail at that point. And I kept traveling, studying abroad. I did it 4 more times, actually, or I've done it 4 times total in 4 different languages. So language is really the thing that kind of set me on course in the beginning. But because I gained so much experience just traveling and being out in the world, and suddenly everybody that I knew and everybody that they knew would come to me for any kind of travel advice. And this was all through the first decade of just traveling and all, even just like how to get a passport. People didn't know, or where to buy a backpack. I feel like these things are much more marketed now, but this is back in the days of, we didn't have Wi-Fi. We didn't have any of this stuff. And that's where it all began. I became the expert really fast. And Then I started learning about online business and blogging and how you could do this for real because I had a blog starting in 2008 and I was
Yeah.
writing for my friends and my parents. But I turned that into an official online business blog and found myself at a conference where somebody said, "You need to start a podcast and you should do these things." And I'm like, "A podcast? I just started a blog." And this is 2014.
Yeah.
And a month later, I launched my podcast. So that was 12 years ago,
Yeah.
which my show is the longest running female hosted travel podcast on the market. It
That's
just
amazing.
is because back in those days, there were a handful of men and a handful of couples also doing a travel show. And out of those original people, I think a handful of men is still there. None of the couples are still there. And I'm still here. And
I
like,
love that.
it's just there's five or less, fewer of us that are left from those
Yeah.
days, even though it's becoming more popular. So, yeah, the podcast really set me apart from other, I'll say, bloggers, because that's kind of how I started out. Although now I'm known much more for my podcast. I do have another blog that I started that's travelingjackie.com. It's like my home
Yeah.
online. And then I also have my trips that I led for 10 years
Yeah.
because my audience, it's interesting being on this side of the mic because you talk and you create content and you put stuff out there. But as a, I'm sure you've listened to podcasts before. You're a
Yes.
real person downloading a show, like
Yeah.
listening to it. So those numbers out there are so much more than numbers. Every number is a person. And
Yeah.
those people started showing up in my world, writing in and saying thank you or whatever it is. And finally I said, you know what? Why am I doing this like in front of all these people? Why don't I invite them to come with me? And so
I love
that's
that.
why I started doing my group trips and I did that for 10 years. And I just stopped doing that like within the last few months and big shifts over here for me. But yeah, I've been at it for a long time. So I know that you just asked how I got started, but there you go. That's a long
No,
answer
I
for
love it.
you.
And I actually had done my research on your history with travel and how you got started. And one of the questions I was going to ask you is how many languages do you speak?
Mm. On a good day, five and a half.
I love that. It's incredible. And the mind is so powerful that, like, we can actually expand, and how incredible it is to learn something new, pick it up, and immerse yourself. And so,
Mhm.
first and foremost, congrats on living a life that is outside of what society says it should be.
Thank you.
I am a huge believer of travel. In fact, I had this dream and vision since I was a little kid that I wanted to travel the world, and I've been able to do that. And I believe travel is such a different education and really opens up our minds, our spirits, our eyes to so many differences. And it's such an immersive, special thing to get to do. I actually had a whole series on travel and helping people to learn what they need to know, how I
Mhm.
travel with a backpack, all of that. And I
Mhm.
know that's partially what you do. And I really wanted you to be on the show back in that series. For whatever reason, it didn't work out. But ultimately, I'm so grateful that you're able to be here now and we're still talking about living your best, most adventurous life, because I think that's what, as the founder of 52, it started with this interest around adventure, and
Mhm.
everything that has come from it is, I couldn't, I can't put words to it because I've received so much in that journey. And so I
Yeah.
want to inspire and motivate our community to follow their wanderlust. And that's why this podcast is actually called Rise and Wander, because it's like life isn't just about following what we think we should be doing, but actually educate yourself, do things out of your comfort zone, rise up in life, and then wander, explore, go out on adventures. So I love how you got started. How many countries have you been to?
Oh, I would have to check, but it's somewhere it's somewhere right in the middle of the 60s.
That's amazing.
Maybe 60. I actually don't know. I
Same.
do keep track, but I haven't paid attention in a minute. And so I
Yeah.
don't know. But yeah,
Same.
I know that I went to my 60th country for my 40th birthday, and that was New Zealand just over a year ago. So it might be a 61 or two. I don't know. But I also, to that note, would like to say that I'm not on a mission to see everywhere. It is not on
Yeah.
my list. I am not one
Agreed.
of those people at all. I love to go back to places that feel like me, that feel like home, because I'm such a wanderer. I'm such a citizen of the world. I see places as, is this my home? Are these my people? Is this my language? Can I live here for a while? And I do sometimes. And those are the places that I feel like they rise up to meet me right where I am. And I love going back to places like that move me on a really deep level. I'm a very deep person and I love going deep and
Yeah,
not just skipping the surface, but
absolutely.
immersing. I mean, I've spent how long studying abroad? That's my style, is much more slow travel, getting to know a place, a culture. There's a quote that I love that is, you live a new life for every language you speak. If you speak only one, you live only once. And
Love that.
I learned that as truth so young because when I was in Costa Rica living there, I had a whole life. I
Yeah.
was going to school. I had friends. I dated guys. I was living life there. I had my host family that I lived with.
Yeah.
It was my everyday. It was my life. And then going back to the US after that was incredibly hard because I had these two, it's like I had a foot in each place and I didn't know
Yeah.
how to, I don't know, like reconcile that terror in my life. And so it is like a whole life. And then I went to Italy and I did the whole thing there too. When I lived there and bartended in Italy every time, and I learned the language and had friends and dated guys, it's all the same, you know, like I was 18, 19, 20, 21 through all this. So just young and learning. And when you, I'll speak for myself, I
Hmm.
essentially created a new life for every single one of those adventures that I did. And it's addicting.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to keep going. I wanted to keep learning because it's just so true. It's like our lives can be so big. Our
Yeah.
brains are so capable. Like we're
Absolutely.
so resourceful. There's so much out there we can experience. Why would anyone be okay with just staying in one place forever? I don't get it. That's not me,
Yeah.
but going slow through places and earning the right to say, this is, I've collected this as part of my life story. I'm not really leaving any of this behind. I'm just adding to my experience as I go. And so, yeah, the slow travel, the immersion, the language, that is definitely the way that I prefer to visit countries.
I've had so many things that I want to go back to, but let's start with this one. Because I think one of the biggest things that happens for people who are curious about travel is they're scared. They don't know where to start. So let's just start with that. What would your tips be for someone new that's like me? When I first, I knew I wanted to travel, but I was like, I don't even know where to begin. So what would your tips be for
Oh, I
someone
have
like that?
so many. If you're really trying to figure out just a destination, is that what you're talking about? Like, where do I go? What do I do? Is that what you're kind of
Just
talking
even
about?
like
Or
if
is it,
someone's wanderlust and they're like, I want
yeah,
to travel, I want to see the world. Like,
yeah.
maybe because,
Okay,
like I said,
yeah.
it's so broad. And that's why I think
Hmm.
people get scared because it's
Yeah.
like, I know I
There's
want to
so
see the
many options.
world, but then
Yeah.
how do I even just start? So I
Hmm.
love that. Maybe even saying like, starting with a destination. Maybe you have, or do you
Yeah.
say, yeah, there's so many ways that could
Hmm.
go.
There are so many, I have so many things in my head to answer
Yeah.
this question with. So let's just start going through them.
Okay.
And let's start with the practical stuff because I love practicality because that's what actually gets people to rise and wander is get off the couch. Okay, if you don't have a passport, make that your priority. Go get a passport. Because once you have the
Perfect.
passport, you got the ticket, right? And then when you're choosing a destination, really like where are the places that you've been interested in going? Where is it that you
Hmm.
want to go? Just start with those, maybe get a top three, and then look at your calendar and figure out what time of year you can actually make this happen and compare the weather and the season with that
That's good.
place.
Yep.
Okay, narrow it down, make sure you're going. I actually love shoulder seasons because they're
Hmm.
often more affordable,
Yep.
fewer tourists, which I'm a big fan because I don't like overcrowded places. And then also consider like why it is that you want to go there. Does that place, why does it speak to you? Is it just
Hmm.
because you want to go see the Eiffel Tower because everybody else does? Or is there a trek like Mont Blanc or something? Like I'm just saying this is that maybe your destination is France. Do you really need to spend all your time in Paris? Or are you a hiker? Can you get outside? Can you do something that looks like you in that place? Because that's where you're going to come alive. Sure, you
Yes.
can check off the Eiffel Tower. You can check off the big things. I actually did that for a long time until I realized, wait a second, I don't even like cities. What am I doing? I'm a small town girl. I was raised in the mountains. I love getting outside. And that's when adventure travel really kind of took over my life because I realized, oh, I can go do things in these beautiful places in other countries.
Yes.
I can check all the boxes for me and feel so connected with nature and myself and reset. Yeah, I'd really consider your priorities when choosing a destination. But so there's some practical things for you. And also just buy the ticket because when you buy the ticket, everything else falls into place if you get your flight. But beyond the practical, I will also say that two things are true. One, the first step is always, it feels the
Mhm.
hardest, right?
Yes.
Getting into it always feels the hardest. I have this story that I always think of when I think of this first step. I was on a Via Ferrata in Quebec. So a Via Ferrata is like a hike, like a climbing route with
Hmm.
rebar and like cables and like you're attached to the wall and like I'm terrified of heights. So like I made it all through this Via Ferrata and I was so proud of myself. And only to come to find out that the way down was a rappel down like a
Yeah.
straight cliff wall. And
Ooh.
we had what, 10 or 12 people in our group. And I got up to the front and I was like, I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. I couldn't physically take that step over the edge. And I got back like into the safe ground. And one of
Mhm.
the guys I was with said, here, do this. And he said, just lean back. And we
Yeah.
sat in our harnesses
Harness. Yeah.
attached to the wall, but like in that triangle shape so that like our legs were straight against the wall. And I'm sitting in the air, but
Hmm.
I'm in safe ground because there's like ground underneath me. So I felt good. He said, this is what it feels like. I'm like, okay. And he said, if you're doing this, then you just walk, down. But the point is, the step over the edge is the absolute hardest part because
Yeah.
that's where like you can't see where you're going. It's scary, but guess what? When I did it, like I had visualized doing it, right? And when I finally got up there, I was the last person to go. So there was no more waiting
Oh
at this point.
no.
I'm like, I have to
Yeah.
get down. Like, otherwise, I have to hike and it's 2 hours. Like, I can't, I have to do this. And I got up to the edge and I finally eased myself over the edge. And then I sat in that space that, like, I had just learned how to do. And I knew I was doing the right thing. And then I just started walking. And guess what? He was right. Because
Yeah.
there I was. And he said, then you just walk and you just let yourself down. And I always remember that because it took a lot of courage for me to actually
Yeah.
get over the edge. But that's the best, like, visual picture that I have of understanding into my core that the first step is the hardest. But
Yeah.
once you get going, you just get momentum.
Yeah.
Once you can get yourself over that edge, into that unknown, into that scary place, guess what? You're still there. You and all of your brains and all of your resources and all of your strengths, like all of that is still with you as
Yeah.
you're doing the thing. And then I did it. I got to the bottom and I looked up. This is 90 meters. It's like 200 feet of like straight cliff wall that I rappelled down just walking. And when I got down and I looked up, I was so proud of myself because I had just done it. I was like, what else can I do? Like, I love that feeling
Yes.
of when you do something hard and then it's like, what else can I do? What else am I capable of? That's like an addicting feeling. And so, encouraging you guys to just take that first step and
Hmm.
understand that when you get there, you
Hmm.
will have your resources with you. This is the second point I was going to make is you're way more resourceful
Yes.
than you think. We all are. It's not
Hmm.
like we leave everything we've learned behind when we get on the plane. No, that's not how it works. You get into this other country, and even if you don't speak the language, you've got body language. There's other people there. You can figure things out. You're always going to be able to figure it out. And so,
Absolutely.
yeah, aside from getting the passport and picking out your destination, taking that first step, booking the flight, whatever it
Yeah.
is, and then just using your momentum and using your resourcefulness to navigate the rest of the way. Like once
Absolutely.
you've done it once, you're going to feel those are your courage muscles growing. And then the next time that you go to use those, they'll be a little bit stronger and then a little bit stronger. And you'll get used to that feeling of, wow, I can do this. Look what I just did. What
Yeah.
else can I
Oh man, I love everything. Thank you for that. And
do?
I think that will help a lot of people. I think for me, anytime I've done anything that has been important in my life, there's always been a moment of hesitation, of
Hmm.
fear. There's been times where, I feel that. I think that's important to remind people. And I always talk about this is it's okay to feel fear. and take its hand
Yeah.
and say, I feel you, I hear you, but we're going to do it anyway. And I also have done rock climbing, and I know what you're talking about, that
Mhm.
feeling of, am I going to be caught? Am I okay? Is someone going to catch me? There's all these things that come up, and taking those deep breaths and just reminding yourself, like, I have to take the first step. And of course, do your research, check people out like Traveling Jackie, her podcast, her website. You have tons of blogs. I was skimming through them. And also, I was going to ask you about, do you still run the Budget Minded Traveler? How is that? Or has that kind of been like more of a resource that you've just left there for people? Because I thought that was really wonderful
Mhm.
too, that
Yeah.
that's your blog that you started. I think that was your first blog.
It was. Yeah, that was my first blog. And it's funny because that's where I was at the time. I did not come from, here's another thing that's really important, I think, is I did not come from money, not even close. It's a joke in my head to say that out loud. If you knew my story, you would know. I had a priority, and my priority was travel.
Yeah.
And so that was my choice. That was my decision. That was my sacrifice. That was my trade-off was I need this thing in my life. I'm going to figure out how to do it. And yeah, and so the Budget Minded Traveler was my first that was the first place where I started pouring all of my expertise into all of this practical talk that we've been discussing. Choosing destinations, how to use your phone overseas, how to research and buy a plane ticket, how to get the right backpack, like all these practical things. That all started there. I started that blog in 2013. And so that was 13 years ago. And thank God I'm not still in that place. We deserve to grow and change and evolve in this
Yes,
life, right? And so, yeah,
absolutely.
so that blog still exists
Yeah,
and it's still being maintained and kept. But it's
that's
more of
great.
just a niche, a website travel resource for people
I love
now.
that.
And I operate on Traveling Jackie. I started Traveling Jackie in 2015. So just 2 years after I started the BMTE blog. But that was because I had so much more to say than
Hmm.
just about the practical side of travel. And
Absolutely.
I didn't want to be kept in a box. That's not who I am. And so
Yeah.
I had created this box. I thought, you know what? Let's just let that go. We'll let that just grow and evolve the way it's meant to. While I'm going to step over here and start Traveling
Yes.
Jackie and just talk about the things that really mean a lot to me, like the courage side of things and the
I love
personal
that.
stories. And because a lot of that came out on my blog too, because I was going through actually a divorce in 2015. And I was able to finally just share deeper things and not just talk about practical travel stuff, which I still love. I still love because I understand that there are people out there who need just tell me what to do. Okay, go to
Yeah.
REI, pick out this backpack. Like,
Yeah.
and that's great. Some people need that. And I totally appreciate that. But now I'm much more into the let's dig, let's go deep, because that's who I am.
On that note,
Yeah.
gosh, you've said some things that I'm like, I want to go deeper into that. Number one, let's just start with, I want any listener here to know that it is totally okay to start new things, to change your mind. I went on a hike with this fantastic, phenomenal scientist woman. Anyhow, we were talking about we're taught life is linear and it's not. And I'm so proud of you for changing and
Mm,
growing. And
mhm.
sometimes projects work for us. And then there's a point where it's time to evolve, it's time to move on. And that's okay. Kudos to you. And if you're listening and you just needed to hear those words, it's okay to give yourself permission to make changes in your life, like first
Absolutely.
and foremost.
Mm,
So I started 52 with it's a divorce story as well. And so I would love to just again reiterate for people who don't know, I was heartbroken when I started hiking. I was going through a depression. It really helped me. So you talked about you had a divorce
mhm.
happen. You want to talk about deeper things. And so how did that impact you? I'm sure it was a stressful time for you, a painful time for you. And how did you use that to fuel you in what you were doing?
Oh, man. It was the darkest and the absolutely most transformative time of my life. I made a very strange decision when I got divorced. I had been obsessing over nomads, like nomadic travel. So I had already been, traveling for, oh gosh, 12 years at that point, a lot, and living overseas. And I have packed up my stuff and put it in storage. I can't even tell you how many times. That's just something that I do. And so the whole nomadic idea, yeah, I've done that plenty of times, but it's been like super short. I either go and live somewhere and then I come back, or I'll take these trips that are, I traveled from Panama City to Mexico City backpacking once, but that was like a 3 month bookended trip. And so the idea of just going nomadic and letting that be open ended, I was like obsessing over this idea. And this was all leading up to that time that I got divorced. And it was one of those things that just the stars aligned. And I said, now's the time because someone's moving out and it's going to be me. And so I did. I put my stuff in storage and I left. And it ended up being almost 4 years. It was like 3.5 years before I ended up back in the town that I started in for a long period of time. I came back in the summer each year for 2 months. That was it. Just to kind of touch base. But that was a very interesting decision for me because in such a time of rebuilding, I decided to go be alone instead of be near friends or family or my people who could support me, which is an interesting choice because I thankfully, this is what 2015, FaceTime existed by then. Like we had
Yeah.
more technology to keep us connected in this way, just like you and I are right now. But this still isn't, it's not the human, it's not the community we need. It's not the touch. It's not the in-person support. And oh man, what I learned in a nutshell in those 3 years was essentially, this is such a nutshell because wow, this is a whole book by itself, but
Yeah.
was essentially like how to support myself on my own when really no one else is around. And this has been a pattern, a theme in my life because even when I was 18 and living in Costa Rica, I didn't have my people. You have new people where you are. You can make new friends, but it takes a long time as adults to get to a point where you really can just go out and have that glass of wine with your girlfriend that knows you and you need that depth of connection. You don't have depth of connection when you're a nomad, really. You have a lot of surface relationships, but you don't have a lot of time to get to know someone on a deep level. And so I didn't have that. I only had me in
Yeah.
these far flung corners of the planet while I was really healing from something and going through changes and being faced with other things I wasn't expecting. And it's okay. You're here, you're by yourself. You got to figure this out. The most you can have is a conversation just like this with someone that means a lot to you, unless they come to visit. And
Yeah.
that time was one of the things that came out of it is one thing we mentioned at the very beginning of this episode was the women's retreats that I led. And I did that because I had learned so much. And my brain, when I learn things, I translate it into lessons and I journal everything. And I had created this curriculum of
Wow.
essentially how to create the net that will catch you when you take that leap. Because they say leap and the net will appear, but I call bullshit on that because
Yeah.
you have to create that. Like
True.
if you're waiting for somebody else to save you, you got another thing coming in this life. That's
Yeah.
not how it works. That's
No.
not how it works. And
Yeah.
so if you're going to make a decision to change your life, you need to figure out how to support that
The
on your own,
steps.
by
Yeah.
yourself, not waiting for somebody else to come in and rescue you. What is that life? That's not your biggest life. And
No.
I, out here by myself, learned that nobody's coming to
No.
save me. If I want to be caught, if I want to stop what feels like this free fall, because it does, it feels like a free fall.
Yeah.
I realized I got to pick myself up. I got to catch myself. And so I learned how to do that. That's the nutshell. Cause like, how do you even explain
Yeah.
that in one sentence? But I learned how to do that. And that right there it's amazing because I never thought that I was going to be the person who could travel alone. I had some experiences earlier on in my travels where I was like, I am never going by myself again. Like this is hard. There's hard stuff out here.
Yeah.
And so to fast forward and then be the person that now I teach other people how to be strong on their own. Wow. That didn't just come out of nowhere. Well,
Yeah.
I went through it and I put myself through it and I chose to show up for that and I chose to show up for me and I got to a point where wow, I can do freaking anything, man. And so now I'm on a completely different trajectory. I've traveled by myself so much. I've invited my people to come with me because I know a lot of people appreciate
Yes.
a helping hand. I had that at the beginning too. And it's like a come full circle, but I had to go through that messy middle of
Yeah.
learning how to do it by myself before I was able to then, with a strong hand, invite people to come with me. I was by myself that first, while I was nomadic, it was the next year that I started leading group trips. And so a lot of things came out of that time.
Yeah.
A lot of really beautiful things came out of that time. Yeah.
There are so many things I want to say. One of the things that I feel I want to add to that is from the darkest time in my life came something so incredibly beautiful. Similar story, right? I get letters sometimes and emails that when I read finisher stories, I'm like, 52 wouldn't exist had I not been in such a dark place. Secondly, on a side note, and it wasn't really what I was planning this talk to be about, but it's like whatever comes up needs to be said. It's so weird because I feel like we're living parallel lives. I went through this pretty rough breakup, and that was in 2022. And I spend a lot of time on my own. I live on my own currently. I moved to New Mexico. And so when I moved, I had this time to really just nurture myself and to really heal. And it's really interesting because I find myself also traveling alone. I've traveled alone quite a bit and I really enjoy my company and I enjoy this thing that I've built within myself, my own home. I am my own home. And I
Mhm.
think that was one of the biggest lessons that I learned since I've been in relationships when I was very young. I was married very young. And I think like you said, no one was coming to save me. So I had to learn to be that all of what I needed for myself. And that is so powerful. And so, to anyone again that might be listening that is struggling or going through a breakup or maybe a difficult time in your life, there is light at the end of the tunnel. You have to do the work. You have to go through it. You can't avoid it. You have to deal with what is. And in that process and that journey, you're really going to truly find something so beautiful and empowering. And I can't tell you what your journey is. I can just tell you from this side of the road that
Mhm.
I would not be and have done or seen all the things I've been able to without that pain and
Yeah.
that dark coming through that I had to overcome and go through. And I'm so grateful for those difficult times because it
Mhm.
makes life that much more rich and there's so much more gratitude. And then, of course, I feel like we're talking about the hero's journey.
Mhm.
And this is such divine timing because this weekend I was invited to an event where we're going to be talking about the hero's journey, but more in the
Mhm.
feminine. And so
Mhm.
I love how when you go through something really dark and deep and difficult, and then you decide that you are going to learn that, and then you're going to bring other people with you. That I think is the ultimate virtue. I don't know what else to say. It's just, it's so incredible. And I'm grateful to know someone like you. And I'm grateful to live that story because now I feel like I'm just here to help people.
Mhm.
And I think we talked about that in your podcast. At
Mhm.
the end of the day, why do we do what we do? We're here to help people,
Yeah.
to be of service, because I know I wouldn't be where I am without someone who has taken their hand out and also helped me. And so
Mhm.
it's that beautiful cycle and circle. So
Yeah.
thank you. If I
Yeah.
don't know if you want to add any other notes before we move on, because I do want to ask you one other thing.
I want to add one thing before
Yeah.
we go away from that, and it's back to the my practical side because I think it's easy to hear a story like this and get inspired, but when you're the one down in the dark place, like how do you know where to go? How do you know what to do? And to that, I will say your light at the end of the tunnel that you mentioned, that light looks like you. And so I would say whatever the wherever you are, I just got chills.
I'm like,
It's in
ooh,
my head. I know.
so good.
But yeah, wherever you are in that darkness, that light, if you see a light, that's because it's you're the one who has to shine the light in the darkness. And so if you do see the light at the end of the tunnel, or if you're looking for it, then look in the direction that things will come to you and present themselves to you, opportunities, paths, and I would say let yourself be your magnet. Be drawn to the things that attract you because that's the path,
Yes.
that's the way out. And there's so many of these stories of business founders. What we're doing at the end of the day is we're helping other people, right? But that looks different for everybody. There are founders of massive household name companies that if you read their stories, guess what? They had a similar thing happen and
Yeah.
they were in a place where they had to then figure out the path and they let this path lead them to this place that's now benefiting so many people. Everybody's path looks different. That's the thing. But if you follow what you are drawn to, where your light is shining, I think, and for me, that path led me to all over the world. It's still going. But that's my story. That's
Yes.
my story. If my story can inspire another person, everyone's winning, right? And that's why I'm
Yeah.
sharing it. And that's where the power exists. But I will say we have that power within us.
Mm.
That's our light is our own. And so whatever light is shedding light on your path that feels good to you, follow the feelings of you.
Yes.
It looks like you. It's going to look like you. It doesn't need to look like anybody else. Yeah. So, because I know it can be scary, that
Yeah,
darkness. It can be really scary.
for
But
sure.
yeah,
Wow. I love
we have
that.
the power to get ourselves out of there.
I love that nugget of wisdom, and I could go so much deeper into
Mhm.
that. And I just want to add to what you said that it's like being authentic to yourself. I call them inklings. I always have these inklings of like where to go next. Hey, today you should do this. Sometimes there's been times where I'm like having a busy day and then all of a sudden it's like you need to call this person. Or
Yeah.
I have this really great, and I've developed it. I want to say this. I've developed this really wonderful relationship with that knowing, with that
Hmm.
vision, with that.
Listening,
Yeah.
paying
And also,
attention.
like when
Hmm.
you have these, I wish I could, or something attracts you. There's a recent quote that I've read that says something like, if something calls you, follow it, or places that call you, follow it because there's something there for you. And I was called to where I live, New Mexico. I've never been here. I thought one day I wanted to road trip here, but then I literally got a ping, internal ping to check out New Mexico. And
Yeah.
wow, it has been one of the most magical experiences of my life. If I could just, I don't even want to get into it because I could blab all day,
Yep.
but I
I
just want to
understand.
say, be true to that knowing. I
Mhm.
always knew as a little kid that I wanted to see the world. In fact, I would always have this daydream that I would be in France or Europe somewhere and open up my window and look out and just be somewhere
Hmm.
different. And then once I lived it too, I will say this. Once I lived that, because I did take off for a year and do the nomad thing, I actually realized that I didn't really enjoy it as much as actually going away for 4 to 6 weeks as my sweet spot and then seeing the world and immersing myself. And that's my sweet spot. But
Exactly.
initially,
Yep.
I thought it was going to be me just indefinitely traveling and wandering. And I came to find that I need more stability in my life. But at least I tried. At least I figured it out. And I'm not
Yeah.
going to go on my deathbed one day and be like, I wish I
Mhm.
would have.
I was just going to say that you just said, at least I tried. And I feel like those were the wrong words because you were being called to do something. So you did it. You didn't try. You actually went and did that. You learned from that. Now you have information going forward. That's what that means. And your story, okay, so you don't need to be nomadic for 3.5 years like I was. I did not know how long that was going to last. And here's what I say to that is I'm doing this for as long as it feels right.
I love
You
that.
can apply that to absolutely anything in life. It's all an experiment. What the hell are we all doing here anyway? Like nobody really knows. And so play with it. Make it an experience and an experiment and say, I'm going to do this for as long as it feels right. And if tomorrow you change your mind, you have permission to do that. If it takes
Mhm.
3.5 years for you to change your mind, you have permission to do that as well because this is your show. It's your story.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Live your life to your
Hmm.
terms. There's nothing
Yeah.
greater than being authentic to yourself.
Hmm.
Okay.
Okay.
With that, I want to move into you had a camper that you had set
Yeah.
up, and it doesn't look like you're living in it right now, but I do
No.
want to hear a little bit about this because,
Okay.
okay, when you get the adventure travel bug, the nature bug, camping bug, I think for me, that's on my bucket list of life is I want to either have a camper van or some sort of trailer. I have someone in my life now, and we've talked about getting a trailer eventually and doing the national parks thing. But
Mhm.
anyhow, I'm sure there's lots of people listening right now that have had that thought as well. And so I wanted to touch on that today, which was like, I don't know, like how has that been? Are you still doing it? Fill us in on this like
Yeah.
part of your life because you're so adventurous and I'm like there's so many things we could talk about, but
Yeah.
I know this is a
Yeah.
topic others want to listen and hear.
Yeah. And this was I'm going to call this a chapter. My full-time camper living was a chapter that is now closed because you can see that I do have walls that are made of wood around me now and electricity and all of these things, which is great. I understand why people subscribe to these things. But so I actually grew up camping. I grew up in the woods. And so the woods and I were partners, like life partners. I am a camper. I can build a fire. I can do all the things. So that was already part of my skill set. And around 2021, I kind of got one of these downloads from the universe of, ooh, something big is coming. And I'm currently obsessed with finding a camper for my truck. I have a Toyota Tacoma. And so I felt like it was going to be one and the same. This big thing is coming. I think I need to get a camper. Something's going on. A year later, I received notice that I was to my place that I lived in for the last 3.5 years was going to be turned into an Airbnb. This is the height of COVID. I was devastated, but I also knew because I had this feeling like, oh, I knew this was coming. This is the big change. I'm being, I have to leave my house, like my home that I've built for myself. I was renting, right? But that was my cozy place, my haven during COVID, after my nomadic years. That's where I landed. And so that was my home that was holding me and it was being taken from me. And so I took that. It was hard. It was really hard because I loved it and I would have stayed if I could have. But sometimes even traveling Jackie needs a push out the door, right? Because if we get too comfortable, then what is the challenge? What is it going to be? What's going to make us actually rise and wander, right? And that was the catalyst was I had to leave my house and long dumpster fire of a story, very short. Within 4 months of moving out, I had a camper on order because I couldn't find a place to live. It was a really hard time because it was the height of COVID and my whole business was travel, which means the night that COVID, like March 10th, when everything started in the United States in 2020, I lost all of my business. Everything was done overnight. It was just completely gone. And so that was a very different kind of rebuilding time for me. And so it was during that time that I was also having to leave my house. And oh my goodness, it was a lot to deal with. And I couldn't afford anything in this town because it tripled in 2 years. It's crazy. So, being me, I reached out to Four Wheel Campers and I said, hey, like I've got a podcast. Can we work together? Can we do something? And I became an ambassador for them. I still had to buy my camper. I'm going to say that. I definitely still had to. Those things are expensive. I have a four-wheel camper Swift. It's fully loaded because I knew that when I was buying it, I was going to move into it. We were going into summer of 2023. And so that was going to be where I was going to live because I was like sleeping in a friend's guest bedroom at the time. I had tried living somewhere. It didn't work out. Everything was pushing me to get this camper. It was one of those things as like, all right, I hear you. Okay, I surrender to this plan. I'm doing it. And once I said yes to it, everything started falling into place. It was one of those things. Okay, I'm meant to live in this camper for now. So I got the camper put on. It was summer solstice of 2023 in June. And I had moved out of my place that February. So it was already March until the next May. So 14 months that I did not have a home other than my camper and some friends' houses. But yeah, I spent a year living in the camper. So it's a pop-up camper. So you can't even sit in there during the day. It's like the kind of tight, cozy space that you either need to be parked and popped up or it's popped down and you're out in the town or whatever. And so it was very challenging to live that way. But it's funny because the things I did a whole podcast on this too, because there's so many stories in here, but I'll just suffice to say the things that I thought were going to be hard about it. I didn't have a bathroom on board, for example. There were things, and yeah, those were challenging, but that was not the hardest part. The hardest part was that as a business owner, as a podcaster, as somebody who's trying to grow a business, I didn't have a reliable place to live. I didn't have. So if you're looking at Maslow's pyramid of hierarchy of, yeah. So the very bottom, the base of the pyramid, the thing that holds everything else up is food, water, shelter, safety. It's like the very basic things. I didn't realize that I wiped out the bottom of that pyramid with one decision. Because essentially that's what I was doing. I was in a place now where I had to really ration the food that comes into the camper because you don't have room for a lot of stuff. I had
Yeah.
to fill my water. I would run out of water. You have to plan ahead for where you're going to get water. I did have a 20-gallon tank and I had a little sink and everything. And I had hot water. This thing is fully loaded. I customized big time on this
Yeah.
thing so that I could live in it. And so, yeah, that ended up being the hardest part was that without the bottom of my pyramid, where I was trying to operate at the top, the upper echelon of the creativity and the flow and the growing a business, whoa, that's some
Yeah.
imbalance. And it really threw me off. But that story, so again, like it's
Yeah.
this beautiful piece of my story that led me to taking a sabbatical. I was so depleted. I was so
Yeah.
exhausted. And I had worked so hard to be coming back, rebuilding after COVID and all of that, but only to have this new, beautiful living experience weigh on me in a different way than I ever expected. I had to put everything aside and go back to my why and figure out what I was doing. What am I doing? Why am I here? What do I want? And I had to get really clear on that to then be able to move forward. And all of that happened after I moved back into a place. It's actually this place. This is the first place that I lived after the camper. And what's exciting is this is the last podcast that I am recording in this place because I am moving, because I am buying myself a house because I have turned shit around here. So, like, yeah, it's
Congrats.
thank you. It is very exciting. I know. But yeah, so that was a crazy adventure in
Yeah.
itself. Beautiful things like waking up in the desert in Arizona, because that's where I went for the winter. I'm based in Montana. It's great in the summer, but I went to Arizona to live out the winter and spent time on the trails there, riding and running.
Love
And
that.
it was amazing. It was a great experience. I learned
Yeah.
so much. I'm so glad I did it. I'm
Yeah.
so glad I'm not doing it anymore. I'm so glad that now I'm going to have
Yeah.
a regular house and a tiny house on my truck that I can take and camp
That's
with and
awesome.
whatever. Yeah. But I've earned that. I've gotten to the
Yeah.
point where I didn't have a place to live for 14 months. I didn't pay rent because I bought this camper. So
Yeah.
it's a choice, a trade-off. Again, it's always a
Yeah.
trade-off. Priorities.
Oh, wow. Let me try to get my thoughts in order. So, one of them being sometimes life is going to throw so many things your way and push you, like you said. And it's like an earthquake happens. And I feel like it's resetting foundations. And I think that's a very
Hmm.
normal part of life. So,
Yeah.
to
That doesn't
anyone
happen
listening,
once. That
no, it
happens
happens
multiple times. Yeah.
many times and
Uh-huh.
I've been through it. And so I really understand that. So I wanted to say that pay attention to the signs.
Yeah.
I love that you listened to your intuition, that you were like, I feel like I need to do this thing. And then boom, you got to move. And it's during this
Hmm.
crazy time in the world and chaos is happening. And I do believe in collective energy around us. And sometimes when things are chaotic, it affects us, right? And like
Oh yeah.
COVID was such a chaotic, weird time. And I'm glad you listened. And again, to anyone that's going through it, you're going to eventually get back down to some sort of balance. I'm glad that you shared your experience because that's, like I said, it was the story where I was like, I thought I wanted to indefinitely travel. And then I realized it's not really for me. But do I want a
Hmm.
camper that maybe I can take on the weekends when I go camping? Absolutely. I know
Yeah.
I want that.
Yeah.
So, so there's a lot of considerations, and I'm glad that you brought some up. And then I think the other thing is congrats on being able to get to a place where you're setting roots, right? And I think that's beautiful too. And being able to, it doesn't have to be one way only. I also bought something and I feel so good knowing that
Mm.
I'm working towards something that feels good for me, but also I can go, I can take off
Yeah.
and go.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's just really empowering to be able to set your goals and to achieve them. So congrats on that.
Thank you. Thank you.
And yeah, it's exciting. It's an exciting time. Yeah, I'm just like, it's been so great to listen to everything. And I feel like this podcast is more about wisdom. I hope people are going to take some really great golden nuggets from this and have motivation, hope, and trust the process, trust
Hmm.
life. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
going to be hard sometimes, but we're growing through all of that and to try to look at the perspective of what is this here to teach me? What am I
Yeah.
learning from this? And it's okay going back to maybe the concept of today is just it's okay to change. It's okay to say that doesn't really work for me. I think I want to try something different. So we're going to start wrapping up. So there's just so much positive information that we've shared today. But is there anything else, like any other wisdom or anything else that came to you that you wanted to add before we wrap up?
Not necessarily. I love the things that we talked about. I think what I hear the most from this conversation really is to give yourself agency to make the decisions for yourself for where you need to go because only you know that. Only you know that. And only you can show up for that for you. Only you can really create the most amazing path of your life. And so, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you give everything you can to try and do that? Just stay curious. Put on those personal earmuffs. That's what I call them. And
Love that.
listen to yourself and just, I guess, feel into it because we're really capable beings. We really
Yes.
do carry inside already what we need. So, yeah.
Beautiful. I love it. Thank you so much for all of
Thank
that.
you.
Thank you for being on. Thanks for sharing your story. Thanks for all you do to help people and motivate them and inspire them to live their most adventure filled life. And we didn't get into very much about the outdoors and all your experiences with that. So I think I'm going to have you on for a second episode
Yeah.
so we can
Part two.
recap. Yeah, part two to be
Yeah.
continued. And for today, where can the listeners learn more about you? And is there
Mhm.
anything that you're excited to share with them as we close today's conversation?
Yeah, you can find me at travelingjackie.com and on Instagram. That's my only real social media. But yeah, I don't really prioritize social media. I prioritize presence. I really appreciate just being present. So occasionally I'll post to social media, but yeah, travelingjackie.com for any of the, I don't know, what I'm going through and what I'm having fun with. So yeah, I'd love to hear from you guys if you want to say hi, reach out to me. But yeah.
I
And
love
I
that.
also I am writing a book right now. So that's a journey. I have so many books to write. But yeah, I do think this is my voice. And if this is speaking to you, then heck yeah, come follow me on my platform so that when my books are out, you can read those too, because that would support me and the whole journey that we're talking about right here.
Yeah. Thank you to anyone listening. We can't do this alone. So when you support our businesses, whether you support me at 52 Hike Challenge, it
Mhm.
allows me to serve you and bring this kind of content and information to you. But it's just to let you know that we're human beings running
Yeah.
our own movements and missions. There's true people working on the back end doing
Yeah.
all the things. And it's crazy. I think they say entrepreneurs and business owners work way harder
Oh yeah,
than a regular 9 to 5 job. And it's so true. It
absolutely.
never ends. And so, yeah, thank you all for your support. Please check out Jackie's website and support her business and spread the word. I think that's all that we could ask for. If you can't support us in a financial manner, then share
Mhm.
this with your friends. I hope
Share
you,
it.
yeah, and
Mhm.
I hope this was really inspiring and motivating for anyone that might be needing these words, these stories, and that you all are coming along with us on this journey. And we hope to see you soon. And thank you so much for being with us. And have a good rest of your day, everyone. Thanks,
Yeah.
Jackie.
Thanks, listeners. Thank you, Carla.